So before I watched this movie, I thought, God, another low-budget found footage horror film. This is going to be a chore. It isn't. Let me tell you, Afflicted is a fantastic movie. Now I'm going to have to go into a little bit of a spoiler here, just so I can give you some idea about what the film's actually like. It's not going to be a massive spoiler, but it's something that happens relatively early on. But if you don't like spoilers at all, just go and check this film out, you'll enjoy it. So basically our story starts off with two best friends, and we're kind of told they're best friends for ages, and we get a little bit of backstory, a flavour of what they're like. And one of these guys has got, it's a bit wrong with his brain, and he's not expected to live a long life because he's expected to have some kind of brain aneurysm at any second, basically. So the pair of them kind of want to go off on this kind of European trip, sort of visit a variety of different places and really just kind of live life to the max. Now, along the way, they visit, I think it's France they go to, and one of the guys meets this beautiful French girl, and she, of course, happens to be a vampire. Now, we're not told this first of all, but it's fairly obvious that things start to sort of go right. Then they come, the other friends that have come back, and this particular guy is laying a bit of the kind of bite on his leg, and soon start displaying kind of your typical sort of vampire characteristics. Now they kind of don't realise what's going on first of all, and it really sort of focuses on the initial part of the film, at least. It's him dealing with these sort of changes, and at first they kind of almost think he's becoming like a superhero, but he seems to have increased agility, speed, strength, things like that, but can't really seem to sort of keep any food down. And it's kind of, it reminds me very much of Chronicle. The beginning of this movie is so reminds me of Chronicle. And then of course I kind of realise what's going on, and then the case it's having to sort of deal with this, and things kind of start to escalate and get kind of worse, as you can kind of well imagine. And that's pretty much the remainder of the movie, without getting into sort of too many spoilers. Suffice to say, it sort of spans a couple of different countries, and things get progressively worse. Now, this is a great film, and you know, there's so many vampire films out these days, and they tend to be a little bit toothless to a certain degree, if you excuse the pun, where vampire films aren't particularly scary. And I have to say, this film, although it's not, you know, I wouldn't say hugely scary film, it does have some very effective use of kind of horror elements in it. And it does kind of, there's a good few jump scares in there, and some of the kind of the imagery is kind of quite shocking, quite fearful. It very much reminds me of a video game in certain scenes. They kind of use these GoPro cameras, and they kind of, so it makes it have like a first person sort of point of view, which some people may find grating, to be honest, but it reminds me of that game Mirror's Edge, if you've ever watched that, like a free running game. This guy, you know, he's jumping high and doing incredible feats, and it kind of just reminds me of that. There's quite a lot of violence in this movie. It's sort of, you know, ultimately one of the guys leaves a kind of a trail of blood behind him, so to speak, and it's quite action packed. But it's such a good one, well made film for the budget, and the effects, I couldn't really fault them. I have to say, I mean, it is obviously a low budget film. There's maybe one effect involving a shotgun I thought didn't work quite that well, but overall I think the effects worked fantastic. I thought the acting was all pretty good throughout the kind of cast, all quite believable. There may be a little bit of coincidence here and there in regards to the script, but really, you know, to kind of move the narrative along, sometimes that has to happen, I suppose. But I can't really fault this film at any kind of major level. It's such an entertaining film. It's gripping. It's edge of your seat. You know, there's quite a lot of blood in it. It's got sort of a good, if somewhat, I guess, predictable story. And, you know, it has a beginning, middle and an end. It's not one of these sort of films I think leaves you kind of hanging like so many of these sort of found footage films do, and they kind of feel unsatisfactory. I think this one, you know, you'll be satisfied with the kind of the film as a general rule, and it kind of what makes you want to see more of it, which is good to know. And I hope they do one. This is a really good, and I'll have to say, this is probably one of my favourite found footage films that I've actually seen, and I've seen a few. So if you are a fan of this movie, go, you know, or the kind of found footage genre or vampire movies, check this one out. It is definitely worth your time. I would give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. Fantastic low budget entry. Go check it out.